We have been meaning to do a Wendy's franchise review for quite some time, just never seemed to get around to it. So today we're going to look at Wendy's franchise. Is it a good investment? Do they have a dark history that some of you may not know about? And is there a subliminal message hidden in their new logo? Today on Franchise City. You know, Wendy's is unquestionably one of the most iconic food brands out there. Founded by Dave Thomas back in 1969 in Columbus, Ohio, Wendy's is the third largest burger chain with over 6,500 locations. Can you guess who the two locations are above Wendy's? If you answered McDonald's and Burger King, you are absolutely correct. Now, a lot of people still think that Wendy's is still owned by founder Dave Thomas and his family, who started Wendy's way back then, but that is not the case. Now, Dave, who was actually an orphan and a high school dropout, started the restaurant with the lofty goal of having a place to work for his 5 kids, and he eventually grew that chain to the fast food giant that it became today. Now, for the hidden history of Wendy's that most of you don't know about, in 2008, Wendy's franchise was purchased by Triarch Companies for $2.34 billion. Now, Mr. Thomas had since passed away, but the remaining family was apparently not happy at this news. Thomas's daughter, Pam Thomas Farber, said, "It's a very sad day for Wendy's and our family. We just did not think this would be the outcome. And if her father were alive today," she said, "he would not be amused." And I quote. Now, Triarch was started way back in 1884 as the Diesel Wemmer Company. It was literally started with one man rolling cigars in his basement. They were now buying Wendy's for over $2 billion. True story. Now, how could a cigar company make so much money? Now, believe it or not, pretty much everybody back in those days smoked cigars. But when the healthier cigarette option became popular and available, many people switched, and thus began the demise of the once very successful company and pretty much the demise of the once flourishing cigar industry as we know it into the niche market that it is today. So eventually the company was delisted and sold off, new blood was introduced, and DWG began to acquire controlling interests in other companies like propane, maintenance and storage, textiles, and steel. Now, the driving force behind these million-dollar acquisitions was a man named Vic Posner. He was not very well liked, as he had a knack for hostile takeovers and was one of the pioneers to practice a leveraged buyout. He would often buy up companies, installing himself as chairman and president, making him one of the highest paid executives of his time. He also got into a bit of trouble for using millions of dollars in company money for lavish vacations for he and his family. Very interesting story. He ended up getting sued by the SEC, sued by shareholders, investigated for fraud and all manner of things. But let's get back to Wendy's. Cut to 1993, DWG changed its name to Triarch Companies. They sold several holdings, deciding to now focus on the food and beverage industry. 1997, Triarch acquires Snapple from Quaker Oats. Check this out. They paid $300 million for Snapple. Not that long before, Quaker Oats had paid $1.7 billion. That's a huge loss of $1.4 billion they lost buying and selling Snapple. Now, Triarch later acquired Arby's. Ultimately, in 2008, acquired Wendy's. They changed its name from Triarch to Wendy's Arby's Group. In 2011, they sold Arby's and became, ta-da, the Wendy's Company, Wendy's International LLC. So an interesting story for sure, but is Wendy's a good franchise investment? Let's take a look. Taken from their 2018 franchise disclosure documentation, the cost to invest in a Wendy's franchise is about $2 million to $3.6 million if you purchase for cash. It's about $570 to $1.1 million if you finance. And the range is $323 to $628 if you are leasing. Wendy's franchise royalties, they're going to amount to about 4% of gross sales. National ad fees, 3.5%. Local advertising, 0.5%. Now, there's a few lawsuits in the FTD ranging from Wendy's allegedly misrepresenting trans fats in their foods to Wendy's being sued by the shareholders for that unjust enrichment, acting in bad faith, and gross management that was regarding the Triarch merger. Now, more recently, back in 2016, you might have heard Wendy's franchise got into trouble for an enormous data breach that affected over 1,000 of their locations. Wendy's first said that only a few restaurants were affected, then finally admitted that over 1,000 stores had been hacked and customers' names, credit or debit card information, and more was stolen. Wendy's tried twice to have that case dismissed, finally agreed to settle for an undisclosed amount. Now, locally, you might have seen Wendy's in your area getting a makeover recently. That's part of a company-wide initiative to update all their stores. But some franchisees are not happy with that. And back in 2014, Wendy's largest franchise, Davco, who owned 140 Wendy's franchise locations at the time, refused to perform the update, stating the capital costs required for these projects substantially exceeds Davco's income and internally generated cash flow. And these renovations are certainly not cheap, costing franchisees between $450,000 to as much as $1.9 million per store. Now, Wendy's sued Davco to try and force them to perform the renovations, but eventually they got out of the situation by selling all their stores to NPC. Now, for you investors, the FDD does indicate an increase for stores that did perform the renovations. Wendy's has also had some negative press lately for refusing to join the Fair Food Program, which has been called one of the greatest human rights success stories of our day. And it helps Florida tomato workers with better wages and working conditions, including monitoring of harassment and sexual harassment and other injustices. Now, Walmart has joined the Fair Food Program. McDonald's has joined, Taco Bell, Subway, and all it costs them is one single penny extra per pound of tomatoes. That small amount helps workers in a big way. Now, Wendy's decision was to just start buying tomatoes from Mexico, and a lot of people are unhappy about that. The website boycott-wendys.org has some very eye-opening information regarding working conditions on farms. We've got a quote here from Harper's Magazine describing subhuman conditions with workers forced to work without pay, trapped for months at a time in scorpion-infested camps, often without beds, fed on scraps, and beaten when they tried to quit. Now, this type of behavior may have been what the Thomas family was worried about way back then. Now, come on, Wendy's, it's a penny a pound. Take a hint from what happened to companies like Tim Hortons in Canada, another big corporation that put money first and had a real tough time with PR in the media lately. Now, some of you might remember in 2005, a customer claimed she found a human finger in her chili at Wendy's. That cost the chain an estimated $21 million. Finger Lady and her husband was found guilty of conspiracy, grand theft, and she was sentenced to 9 years in prison. Apparently her husband, he got 12 years, had got the finger from a co-worker who had cut it off in an accident. They just threw it in the chili. Wendy's recently has been selling off their company-owned stores to franchisees. They sold 223 stores in 2015, 302 in 2016. Maybe they don't want to spend money on renovations. So how much money can I make if I buy a Wendy's franchise? Very, very important question. And let's take a look now at the QSR 50. I'll put a link down below. This is a great website to determine a lot of very important data. And we can see here that the top QSR ranking is on the side here, is McDonald's, number one. Their earnings per store, $2,550,000, and that's average sales per unit, so per store earnings on an annual basis. These are 2016 figures. They haven't updated, I don't believe, to the 2018, which will reflect 2017 numbers. We can see below Wendy's coming in at number 4, and these aren't ranked by annual revenue, by the way, but the amount is $1.4 million. We can see Burger King below that at $1.3 million. We can see Taco Bell at $1.5 million. We see Chick-fil-A down there at number 8, $4.4 million. And there's a bunch of really interesting numbers that you guys can take a look at just to compare. It's also very easy to find out online how much it costs to invest in these franchises. So you can do a comparative analysis on what the investment is versus how much you are potentially going to make. And of course, that number is going to vary depending on your location. Now, before we wrap up, Wendy's recently updated their logo. Can you see a subliminal message hidden in there somewhere? If you look really close, you can see the word mom in the ruffled collar of Wendy's. Now, Wendy said it was not intentional. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and if you need help finding or researching a franchise, give the experts a call at Franchise City. You can learn more about us at franchise.city. Yes, that's .city, not .com. Thanks for watching.